recite some verses of the Quran for us. So you know, a Hafiz is someone who has committed the entire Quran to memory. So Hajra behind us here has committed all 6,236 verses of the Quran to memory.
Wow.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العظيم.
With the name of God, the merciful, the very merciful. Praise belongs to God, the Lord of all the worlds, the all-merciful, the very merciful, the master of the day of judgment. You alone do we worship, and from you alone do we seek help. Take us on the straight path, the path of those on whom you have bestowed your grace, not of those who have incurred your wrath, nor of those who have gone astray.
Thank you, Hajra and Muhammad. Now if I could please invite Laura Frisch and the Morton Grove women who drink tea to the stage. So this special group of women you see to my right began when one Jewish woman reached out a hand in friendship to her Muslim neighbor to offer support. That one act of kindness became an inclusive gathering of women who now gather monthly to learn from each other and support one another. So without further ado, here's Laura and the women of Morton Grove to recite a Rumi poem for you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to see this. We're all going to move up really close. I was going to do an introduction, but that was perfect. Thank you. And if you see any of the ladies with the flowers and you would like to join our group, please approach us at the end of the evening.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Jalaluddin Rumi is perhaps the most widely known Muslim poet in the world. Even after the passage of almost 1,000 years, his poems and writings are avidly read by people all over the world. In fact, today in the West, he is the most widely read poet among both Muslims and non-Muslims. We will read two poems of his this evening in celebration of Ramadan. Allah is the first poem, and it is also the name of God, the Almighty. Allah.
I tried to find him on the Christian cross, but he was not there. I went to the temple of the Hindus and to the old pagodas, but I could not find a trace of him anywhere. I searched on the mountains and in the valleys, but neither in the heights nor in the depths was I able to find him. I went to the Kaaba in Mecca, but he was not there either. I questioned the scholars and philosophers, but he was beyond their understanding. I then looked into my heart, and it was there where he dwelt that I saw him. He was nowhere else to be found.
The Rose.
What Allah said to the rose and caused it to laugh in full-blown beauty, he said to my heart and made it 100 times more beautiful.
Thank you, ladies. That was fantastic. I begin in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto all of you here. My name is Dr. Rasha Ali, and I have the great honor and privilege of inviting you and welcoming you to our annual Interfaith Iftar. On behalf of the MCC and MEC community, we really value and appreciate that you took time out on your busy Tuesday work night to make it here. Particularly, I would like to extend my gratitude to our Jewish companions here. Today is the Jewish High Holy Day of Shavuot, and so that day commemorates when the Torah was revealed to Moses and the Israelites, similarly to how we believe the Quran was revealed in Ramadan. So thank you for taking time out of your holiday to spend some time with us. Also, we have many elected representatives here today. A round of applause for Jan Schakowsky for making it our schedule. We also have with us the Mayor of Morton Grove, Dean Maria. And our Morton Grove trustees, if you could please stand as well. So just a few minor housekeeping announcements. The bathrooms are located upstairs and on your right-hand side. I'm going to ask our youth volunteers to please stand and identify yourselves at this time. They're located at the rear. Oh, just kidding. Okay. They're working upstairs. They'll come back down later. Should you need any assistance in finding the bathroom, knowing where to go to the exit, they'll be down later to direct you. Okay? So,
volunteers back here.
volunteers, if you could stand up, please. So tonight we have a dynamic lineup of speakers for you from all different faith backgrounds, and they'll be sharing their spiritual narratives. So I look forward to that shortly, but prior to that, I'd like to take a few moments to share with you a little background information about Ramadan and fasting. So as many of you might know, Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, and as I alluded to previously, this month is unique because Muslims believe that the Holy Quran was revealed to us. Okay. The hallmark feature of this month, as you probably know, is fasting, which involves abstaining from food and water from sunrise to sunset, solely for the pleasure of God. At the end of the day, the fast is broken with a meal, and the process begins anew the next morning. Fasting, which is the 4th pillar, does not involve just avoiding food and water. It's really about making an extra effort to contain your worst behaviors. For example, a famous saying of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is as follows: whoever does not give up false statements, telling lies, committing evil deeds, or speaking ill words to others, Allah is not in need of his fast. So the idea is you're not supposed to engage in this behavior at any time, but it's particularly disgraceful if you're fasting. In the Islamic tradition and in many other spiritual traditions, fasting is considered a means of spiritual purification. It's a way to develop intense self-discipline, and it's ultimately an act of complete surrender to God. In our Islamic tradition, this particular act of fasting is the worship that is esteemed as particularly dear to the Creator. Another saying of the Prophet is where Allah says, fasting is for me, and I shall reward for it. Mankind gives up to his desires and his food for my sake. Alongside fasting, Muslims engage in significant prayer and remembrance throughout this month. And we increase our acts of charitable giving, and basically we try to accelerate performing our good deeds. We believe that good deeds are additionally rewarded during this month. Bonus points, if you will. And at the end of our lunar month, we celebrate the completion with a holiday known as Eid al-Fitr. And as I mentioned previously, fasting is not unique to Muslims or to Islam. This is ubiquitous across all world religions. For example, my Christian brethren practice the tradition of Lent, which similarly requires believers to give up food, a drink, or another earthly pleasure for approximately 30 days. In the Old Jewish Testament, written that Prophet Moses fasted as he received the revelation of the covenant. And in Hinduism, followers of the faith may fast from 1 to several times a week on a regular basis. That's just the tip of the iceberg though, and I don't want to take from our speakers. And so tonight, our goal at the Muslim Community Center is really this: to invite you to reflect on our common traditions of fasting, and by extension, our common quest for spiritual redemption. I would now like to invite our interfaith community leaders to the stage to begin our storytelling portion of our evening. All right, so I will start by reading all their bios for you. So if I could ask Rabbi Rachel Mikva to please stand. Okay. She's the Rabbi Herman E. Shulman Associate Professor of Jewish Studies and Director of the Center for Jewish, Christian, and Islamic Studies. Professor Mikva has served as a congregational rabbi for 13 years before returning to academia. Her research and teaching focus on interpretation of the Hebrew Bible in various times and places, exploring how the ideas both shape and reflect the societies in which they unfold. She is particularly interested in the intersections of exegesis, culture, and ethics. Our next esteemed guest is Mr. Van Gilmer, Music Director at the Baha'i House of Worship. Mr. Van Gilmer, if you could please stand. Mr. Van Gilmer is a renowned vocal soloist, composer, and choral director. He serves as the music director at the Baha'i House of Worship. He first came to Wilmette in 2005 at the invitation of the National Spiritual Assembly, and he has since then lovingly drilled the resident choir members, expanded the repertoire, and in 2007 he established a music festival that annually draws more than 200 singers from around the globe. Welcome, Mr. Van Gilmer. Next we have our beloved MCC chaplain, Tahira Ahmed. Her official title is the Northwestern University Associate Chaplain and Director of Interfaith Engagement. Tahira, if you could please stand. Tahira is an Islamic Studies scholar. She's a native of Chicagoland and a product of this MCC Community Center right here. She has served in more organizations than I can keep track of. She's been here at the Islamic Foundation in Villa Park, Chicago Council of Great Muslim Organizations, the Inner City Muslim Action Network, and several others. She was the department head of Islamic Studies at the Islamic Foundation School in Villa Park, and she has also taught courses in Quran, Arabic, and Islamic Studies. Thank you for being here, Tahira. From the Winnetka Congregational Church, we have today Reverend Jeffrey D. Braun. Reverend, if you could please stand. Reverend Braun is the senior pastor at the Winnetka Congregational Church. He started his role as senior pastor in September 2015. He's also served as the senior minister of the First Congregational Church, the United Church of Christ, which is a 900-member church in Cheshire, Connecticut. Say that 10 times fast. And before that, he was an associate minister at the First Church of Christ in Reading, Connecticut. Okay. Tonight we also have with us Mr. Subal Das. Mr. Das, if you could please stand. Mr. Das is the Vice President and Ashram Director at the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He has been a practicing Bhakti Yoga since 1983. He is a professional musician trained at the Berklee School of Music in Boston. So what's going to happen now is we'll have each of our speakers share their spiritual narratives or their anecdotes with us. And at the termination of each of their talks, we'll actually be playing a video from our Sikh colleagues. Our brothers and sisters of the Sikh community could not be here, but they graciously provided a video which highlights, what happens which highlights hate crimes and their response to them and how they've grown as a community. This video is particularly poignant, as many of you might have heard of what happened in Portland, Oregon last week, when 2 innocent American men were killed because they stood up to defend their Muslim American sisters. So that video will be showing you right after our storytellers. So without further ado, I would like to invite Rabbi Rachel Mikva to the stage.
Thank you for the invitation. Can you all hear me? Yeah. It's my big girl voice. So it was suggested that we share stories of fasting and of self-sacrifice from our tradition and look for those threads that bind us and help us to fashion stronger communities together. So Judaism certainly has such traditions, most especially on Yom Kippur and the 10 days of repentance that lead up to it. And not too many years ago, Ramadan aligned with the Hebrew month of Tishrei, in which those high holy days fall. And so we shared a lot of those stories. This year, however, because Ramadan aligns with the Hebrew month of Sivan, and tonight begins the holy day of Shavuot, I wanted to share a slightly different story that doesn't involve fasting. So Shavuot is a spring harvest festival, but it's also, as Rasha said, the day on which tradition teaches that the Torah was revealed to the entire Jewish people standing at Mount Sinai. So it always comes 50 days after Passover. At Passover, we celebrate the historical liberation of our people and the mixed multitude that came out with us from slavery. But that's only freedom from. Receiving Torah at Sinai, the covenant with God that it describes, those provided the direction of the life of the people. It became our freedom too, right? Freedom from slavery in order to embody the covenant. So each year we literally count the days between Passover and Shavuot, and they are a time of introspection and preparation as we are always on our way to Sinai. So tonight's the 5th night of Ramadan, right? So I ask because there is a hadith reported in the name of Wahila ibn al-Aska. Rasul Allah, the messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said the scriptures of Abraham, upon him be peace, were revealed on the 1st night of Ramadan. The Torah was revealed after 6 nights of Ramadan had passed. The gospel was revealed after 13 nights of Ramadan had passed. And the criterion, Al-Furqan, was revealed after 24 nights of Ramadan had passed. So the messenger received many of these previous teachings of the divine. So it's just one of those almost alignments in time that makes the little mystic in each one of us smile, right? Because Shavuot is the 6th of Nisan, when Torah was revealed to us. But the story I want to share is actually from a part of the Hebrew Bible from a later time. And unlike many of the biblical narratives, its characters are not mentioned in the Muslim tradition. It's a story of Ruth and Naomi. And it's relevant because it's read on the morning of Shavuot. It'll be read tomorrow morning in synagogues. So Naomi and her family, they lived in Bethlehem in the land of Judah. But an enduring famine drove them from their home to the land of Moab. So there, their 2 sons married Moabite women and they began to settle in. But tragically, Naomi's husband died. And then her 2 sons. So now the 3 widows were bereft. Naomi heard that the famine had ended in the land of Judah, and so she decided to return home. And she urged her daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah, to stay in Moab, the place where they were born, for each of them to find shelter in her mother's home and to seek out another husband. Naomi felt she had nothing to offer them. And she prayed that God would grant them chesed. Chesed, this is a key word. It's loving kindness that's not earned, but simply given as a grace to bless their lives. So at first both daughters-in-laws insisted, no, we'll go with you, back to Bethlehem. But eventually Orpah tearfully agreed it was the best course and she went home. Ruth, however, proclaimed, do not urge me to leave you, to turn back and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. When the two of them then arrived in Bethlehem, at the time of the barley harvest, the town began to buzz. The women said, is this Naomi returned? And Naomi said that her name, which means pleasantness, was no longer the right name for her. Instead, they should call her Mara, bitterness, because she went away full, and God has brought her back empty. In her grief, understand, in her grief, Naomi couldn't yet see how Ruth's loving kindness, her chesed, was beginning to fill that emptiness. So fortunately, instead of barriers to foreigners and dismantling of the social safety net that had become the order of the day in the US, the Torah commanded that anyone who doesn't have enough to eat should be allowed to glean behind the reapers and take what they need. So Ruth found herself gleaning in the field of a man named Boaz, a distant kinsman of Naomi's, and he took notice of her. So when Naomi saw all the grain that Ruth brought home, she began to see the transformational nature of this chesed. She understood how Ruth's faithful, loving kindness, beyond any measure she could have expected, had changed her life and had also inspired chesed in Boaz as well. So slowly, Naomi even began to realize she still had this capacity inside herself too. She decided to help Ruth secure a home in the future, to release her from whatever sense of obligation she might feel to stay with Naomi the rest of her days. So she urged Naomi to go proposition Boaz, that's a nice way of putting it, when he came to the threshing floor. Ruth went a step further, asking Boaz to act as a redeeming kinsman, to restore the family's property and namesake. So Boaz understood this was an even greater act of chesed on Ruth's part, for it had the power to redeem both Ruth and Naomi. And he welcomed the idea that he too could be an agent of this chesed. He did marry Ruth and restore the family line. In fact, their child, counted as a living son for Naomi as well, became the ancestor of King David, the anointed king of ancient Israel. So why is this story read on Shavuot? Many reasons are given. The time of the barley harvest, Ruth's embrace of the covenant, just as the Jewish people embraced it at Sinai. My favorite, however, is that the chesed demonstrated by the figures in the book of Ruth is that the chesed is essential if Torah, or if Quran, or if any version of divine instruction is to be the force for blessing that God intends. We are each agents of the divine in our capacity for chesed. We don't build strong communities simply by offering to others what we feel they've earned, but by extending a loving kindness, a chesed that heals wounds, binds us together, and builds a collective future. So that's my story for tonight.
Thank you, Rabbi Mikva. I always love a happy ending. So next, Mr. Van Gilmer, if you could please come to the podium.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, but more wonderful that we are coming together from our different religions and being able to now share things that years ago were secret in many ways because we didn't talk to each other about those things. I have almost a voice, I've been singing a lot. And we had 2 concerts on Sunday, so I'm coming back. I won't tell you too much about the Baha'i fast, but I want to tell you that it is very similar to Ramadan, in that it comes the 19th month of a Baha'i year. That's 19 months of 19 days each. It is preceded by the 4 or 5 days that are left over in the year just before that 19th month, where Baha'is also abstain from food and drink and personal kind of corrupting things during that period. I'm going to go to a story of my becoming interested in a faith that required that you observe the fast. And as has already been said, the fast is something that you do to connect yourself directly to God, to become purer in your own self. And you do this fast. And I remember in the south of this country, in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I became a Baha'i, I wondered when they told me that you must observe a fast. And all I knew about a fast was you don't eat, you don't drink. What is this? When can I do it? It also is a fast that is from sunrise to sunset. Abstain from sunrise to sunset. And in that time, connect with God all through the day. It wasn't something easy for me to think I could be able to do because I had not been exposed to fasting. It was not a tradition in my community. My community was an American black community. And I was a member of a church that did not fast. I mean, we observed little things that might be related to fasting, but not this kind of fast that Ramadan is, or that the Baha'is observe in their 19-day fast. This coming close to God is something I think we ought to be able to do without even having to be reminded. But the fast is so comprehensive that I first started it thinking that if I'm hungry, then I will pray. If any time during the day I feel very hungry, I'll pray. I started learning some of the prayers during this period because I then devoted my time to learning Baha'i prayers. I'm a musician, and so when I'm reading these prayers that are to God, that we may choose to use, I found verses like, "Cause me to taste, oh my God, the divine sweetness of thy remembrance and praise." And so I put those words to music. After we had our prayers in the morning, we'd eaten, and now we were having prayers. And I went to the piano and spent the next few hours thinking about those words. The choir over at the Baha'i Temple sang, and this was 200 people from around the world, sang Sunday. And one of the songs was a phrase from the prayers for fasting. These are the words: "O Lord, lift me up, that I shall not fall back." And when you think about what these words are saying, lift me up that I might not fall back. We're living in times when you hope to be lifted up. You hope to be lifted up by prayer. You hope to be personally lifted up by connecting with God. So for me, it was a very personal thing. And yet, it has become something that I miss. We didn't say who fasts and who doesn't. In our laws, if you're over 15, you may observe the fast. If you're over 70, you don't have to fast. I'm over 70. And let me tell you, all the years of fasting became such a tradition in my own body that I still was fasting. And somebody said, you're not supposed to be fasting now if you're over 70. And I said, well, I'm going to try not to. And they said, well, you're breaking the law. The law says after you're 70, you don't have to. Well, I finally started holding back a little. Fasting is wonderful. I think all of us who do it in however way our religious traditions say, we find a lot of strength in connecting directly to God and doing it more than we ever do it during that period. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Mr. Van. Next, I'll have Chaplain Tahra Ahmed. Please come to the podium.
Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace. Shalom alaikum to our Jewish brothers and sisters. Thank you again for being here tonight. This is the masjid or mosque that I grew up in, so I have a very dear spot in my heart for this place. Thank you, our representative and Congresswoman, Janet Zukowski, and also I did not actually get to meet the new mayor, but I've seen your posts everywhere, and I know the community really appreciates everything you're doing, so thank you. Also, I wanted to just acknowledge that for the Jewish community it is Shavuot, and I'm actually going to be teaching tonight at 2 a.m. with cheesecakes. Apparently that's a thing in the Jewish community, cheesecakes. Dairy, okay. So yes, I'm going to be teaching about the revelation of the Quran, which is going to be really interesting for the Jewish students on our campus. So I'm going to really quickly, the way I wanted to talk to you about storytelling around Ramadan is actually beginning with my own story very quickly. I grew up in this community. I went to this school right here, the full-time school, and as folks were talking about fasting, I was thinking to myself, well, in many ways, I would argue that I was indoctrinated to the faith tradition. So I would wear the hijab because all the other young women were wearing one. I was fasting in Ramadan for 29 or 30 days, not because, yay, it's fun. I mean, I know that the rabbis and the pastors and the priests in here will say that, but it's something that really takes a little bit of spiritual quest, right? So I was fasting. I was probably wearing hijab, praying 5 times a day because everyone else was doing so. I begged my parents to send me to a public school when it came time to graduate because, again, I wanted to experience something more than just the Muslim experience. And so the argument went something like, I don't want to get to know just like Sarah and Khadija and Ahmed and Ali. I want to get to know like the Stacys and the Kims and the Jacobs and the Jasons. And of course, Dad would not allow the Jacobs and the Jasons. I always joke about that. So I went to Niles West High School, which is very close by. I played varsity basketball, ran track, and I basically played all these team sports while I was fasting. And obviously that was not easy. I mean, imagine you go to conditioning at 6 a.m., go to gym class, and then you go to practice, right, for 2-3 hours, and you're not drinking any water. It's really something. But my coach and my teammates really respected that about me. But everything seemed to be okay until 9/11 occurred. And I will state that because I think it's important as part of this larger conversation about where we are today. The same referee, and some of you know this story, Dilnaz probably hasn't memorized, the referee who had seen me play in the Central Suburban League for 3 years, during my career in basketball, stopped the game at 1:34 seconds left into the 4th quarter and said, number 33, you're in violation of the IHSA, Illinois Rules for Uniform Code and Conduct, meaning the garb I was wearing all tucked in, he was questioning that. My coach, who was a devout Christian, was on the sideline, and he was arguing on my behalf, and he said, we have all the paperwork to prove that she can wear what she's wearing, and I was let back into the game. One of the parents walked on from the bleachers later as I was going back to the locker room and said, number 33. I turned around, he said, it's a shame they let you back in. So some of these instances occurred, and on one of them, a young man actually tore my hijab off, spat in my face, and said, I know why you didn't want to date me. It was because you were trying to be with bin Laden, right? He used some other language that I cannot use in the mosque. And my honors English teacher asked me to stay after class one day because he realized there were a lot of horrible things happening, not just to myself, but other young Muslims at the time. And he said, Tahra, if you need to talk to someone, I'm here for you. And I thought, gosh, that's just so wonderful. Somebody finally wants to talk to me. Then he proceeded to say, Tahra, if your father forces you to wear that, or if he beats you at home, or if there's any abuse, there are counselors here, there are social workers here, we're all here for you. So I said, why do you feel that way? And he had printed a piece of paper on which there was a man from the Taliban holding a stick over a bunch of women wearing long blue burqas. So he put that in front of me. And honestly, as a 16, 17-year-old, I didn't know how to engage with someone around that conversation of, I don't know what that means. Is that representative of my faith? In some sense, he really did care about me, and I believe that. But in another sense, he was asking me to explain something much greater, which every single person that I knew in my life at the time, particularly the non-Muslims, were asking the same questions. So I went to one of my mentors, and I said, I'm really struggling. First of all, I thanked the teacher for his time. And I remember walking out of that classroom thinking to myself, the world is going to continue to ask me questions, and I need some answers fast. So one of the things that I did was I worked at a Jewish pharmacy after high school, and a lady came to the front and asked for medication. And I gave her medication, and she refused to take it. She leaned over me and she said, Mark, I am not taking my pills from this ragged Muslim girl. I went back to the pharmacy. My boss went to the front. He thanked her 3 times. I was thinking, why are you thanking this woman? Later, I found out that he thanked her for all of the years of patronship, but that she is not welcome if she is going to continue to harass any one of his employees. Then he came back to me. This is a Jewish man. He came back to me and he said, Tahra, I just want you to know that as a young Jewish boy, I grew up in fear. He did not grow up around this area, by the way. He grew up in the Bible Belt. And he said, I don't want you to grow up in fear. And that was my first Shabbat meal, by the way. I then went to my mentor and started talking about this whole idea of we live in a time and space where people are going to be continuing to engage with each other and going to be asking some tough questions, not just the interfaith, falafel and hummus discussions, but the real questions where I'm scared about certain things about your tradition or what I perceive to be your tradition. So one of my teachers said, go back to your earliest tradition. Go back to when the Quran was revealed. Go back to when Ramadan started. And I was like, what does that mean? He said, go back to the tradition. Go back to the earliest of the traditions. Who was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? What did he stand for? Why was the Quran revealed? And I think that's what I want to leave you with, is that one of the stories he shared with me was about he had 2 grandsons. And one of them, actually, many Muslims don't know this, he actually had a speech disorder, or speech impediment. And they were in a gathering, so this is the story he shared with me around Ramadan. He said they were in a gathering, and one of his grandsons was trying to finish a sentence. And those of you who have either family members or, if you work with folks who have this condition, know how much anxiety there could be around this concept, right? Of being trying to finish what you're trying to say, which I'm trying to do now, very quickly. So he was trying to finish what he had to say, and he couldn't. And people got really impatient. And then the impatience grew. And the companions of the Prophet were watching this, 10-year-old boy trying to finish what he's saying. And he had a speech impediment, so he was trying to finish his sentence, trying. And then one of the companions said something along the lines of, oh, this poor little boy. And that's when the Prophet he stood up and he said, my son, you have all the time in the world. Take all the time in the world that you want. And they are making fun of you now, but had they known that your great-grandfather had a similar condition? And do you all know who he was speaking about? Moses, yes, thank you very much, right? So some scholars say that Moses had that same condition. So he acknowledges this young man. He allows him to finish what he's saying, right? So the question I have for you is, whose voices are we not listening to in the time and space that we live in? Ramadan was very much about listening to your community. The Prophet Muhammad would retreat to a cave because his own family was not listening to the weakest members of society. The Quran's revelation, very much the first 13 years of Revelation, is about caring for the poor, caring for the sick. All of Revelation, if you look at it, is very much about the idea of taking care of those whose voices are not being heard in your community. And how do we do that? We do that by reconnecting with ourselves. Giving up something like food, water, shelter, like all of those things are actually allowing us to reconnect to the voices that we are ignoring. And those are ultimately our own voices in connection to God, and then those who are around us, who are often those who are not, or who are considered the weakest members of society. Thank you so much for giving me some time.
Thank you, Tahra. Next we have Reverend Jeffrey Braun. You can please make your way to the podium.
I was talking to a parishioner the other day, and we were having a church event, and I said to this parishioner, stop and just listen. I think they thought I was reprimanding them. And then they understood I was wanting them to listen to the tone and the tune of the room. And this is a night of stories shared across faith traditions, but what was striking me as I was sitting at the table here, kind of gathering my thoughts after a busy day, and yes, I fasted except for a small bowl of oatmeal that I did have earlier. I was told not to say that. So Dilnaz said you can do a partial fast. Dilnaz, I did the partial fast. Listening to the tone of this room at the beginning of our night, before it was officially called to order, was a story in and of itself. There was that wonderful, burbling sound of humans engaged, heart to heart, mind to mind, spirit to spirit. I could not make out one word of any of the conversational threads that were in this room, but it did not matter, because there was a meta message, a broader conversation going on. It said, I am here, and you are here, and we are here together, and this moment matters. And there is so much wrong in the world right now. There always has been, there probably always will be. We are called to do something on the grassroots level, on the human level, on the community level. And the sound of this room was burbling and yet empowered testament to the fact that your hearts, on a busy Tuesday night, with faith traditions calling us in different directions, were willing to come and be together. Amen to that. And no, that wasn't part of my remarks, but I know you're going to not take time away, right, Dilnaz? Kidding. I have to cut into my own remarks. Sacrifice is something I'm doing right in the moment. I want to say a thank you to everyone here at the Muslim Community Center for your incredible hospitality. I was sharing the table with Mary here, who was sitting next to me at one of these wonderful reserved tables. It looks so fancy to be at a reserved table. I never get to be at the reserved table. Thank you again, Dilnaz. I had to pay extra for that, by the way. Did you have to pay extra for that? And we were talking just about the joy of this night. And I want to just say thank you to Dilnaz in particular. She is an amazing host on behalf of this community center. She wrote me after I said, yes, I would love to come on this evening, and almost instantly responded to an email I sent. And this is what she said, shows her dedication and commitment to this endeavor and yours as well. I just landed from London to Pakistan with family activities for the next 2 weeks. I'm trying to stay cool in 106-degree heat with fun-filled cousin events. Thinking, an intercontinental plane ride, extended family, sometimes a challenge, let's tell the truth, and 106-degree heat, very committed. Amazing, thank you. I'm going to tell you now even more briefly a story about sacrifice and shared experience that helped to grow and strengthen a sense of community within the youth of my congregation. They recently embarked on a mission trip to New Orleans, which, when we're talking about voices we have stopped listening to or ignored or kind of shunted to the side, those that are still trying to recover from Hurricane Katrina nearly 12 years later. And it was a bit of a sales pitch in my congregation. Why New Orleans? What's the problem there? It's so fallen out of our consciousness. The youth had only really two things or three things in common. They were members of a common church, although they didn't know each other very well. They had all felt a call to go down and help others they had not met, willing to embrace the uncertainty of that trip. And they all knew that they would be giving up the spring break trip that they otherwise might have taken with their friends, families, or with their own family, or at least a more leisurely week back in Winnetka. We went down there, and I want to tell you just a few little facets that describe how their community grew through the sacrifice they were willing to welcome upon themselves and enter into. The first was the housing conditions. They're in a bunkhouse. These are not the conditions they live in at home. 7, 8 people in the same room, most of their stuff on top of their stuff. Their stuff getting mixed all over the place. You know how teens are in general. There were some neat nicks, but mostly they have a spread it out, it's good approach to housekeeping. Which is why leaving always takes longer than arriving in a bunkhouse. Is that your shoe or my shoe? How much we have in common now. They had to get used to living with people they had not been living with, and adjust the way they went about their daily tasks to make room for the other that wasn't yet a friend or even a well-known person on the trip. Subtle things, small things like sharing a room. Food. The youth prepared all the food, shopped for all the food. And there was one person on the trip who had a very profound set of food allergies, so much so that he could actually die if he was exposed to peanuts. Well, the youth were preparing hamburgers one night and cooking, and they decided to use oil, and they thought they were using olive oil. You'd never imagine the incredible sound of all the youth as you hear this. Oh my gosh, it's peanut oil! We're going to kill Billy! Smoke's coming out of the kitchen. The group rallies around the one who had the vulnerability. His food allergy became their issue. His needs became their needs. They put him out on the front porch on the second floor, farthest away from the door. They set up fans, some of them having to hold him near the windows. His shared vulnerability became their common strength. And had he not shared that, they wouldn't have been able to rally like they did, and as beautifully as they did. By the way, the adults were all drinking coffee outside, so we were not really helping in the strength of the community. We were observing it, paying witness to it. Another element was the work at the house that we were doing. The irony of religion, or the paradox of the spiritual experience. Often, you do more and you get less. You do less and you get more. In this case, it was the more they insulated and put up sheetrock in the house, the hotter the house got, and the worse the work got. And yet, adversity shared, once again, a common theme, shared adversity for them became a source of bonding. Because they saw the woman who had been nearly 12 years displaced, who was living down the street with family members, come over, barely able to walk because she needed a hip replacement and a knee replacement, and saw what she was going through and how positive she was. Her adversity became their motivation. And they saw fit to work extra hours to make sure the home was even more accomplished, more finished by the time they left. The last thing I want to share is the fact that uncertainty itself became a source of strength within that community, within a community. They did not know what they were going to face. They did not know who they were going to meet. They did not know how they were going to make their food, let alone would they be able to stay clear of all the food allergies that one member of the group had. And yet they were willing to cast off the need for certainty, to know before we go, so as to enter into something that was far more holy than they ever could have imagined. And what I saw as a result of that, being one of the witnesses on that trip, those that observe, are impressed by, and then share the sacred story with others, no matter our faith tradition. We're all asked to be witnesses of God's work in the world. What I saw were their hearts set on fire for a cause that was higher than they had thought they were engaged in originally, for a community that was broader than they thought it could ever be, and all in response to the willingness to step into that uncertainty and to say yes to the call that we love our brothers and sisters of the world as God loves us. It was a simple mission trip with a group of youth who didn't really know each other. By the time we came back, we truly felt that we were part of God's community. And what a blessing it is to have witnessed that. What a blessing it is to be here this evening. And how excellent it is that now I see the sign that says stop, and I'm ready to do that.
Thank Thank you, Reverend Brown. And completing our interfaith narrative tonight, last but not least, Mr. Subuldas.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. It's a great honor to be here. It's such a wonderful gathering of excellent people, leaders of our society, and just people of God. And when you're part of this type of gatherings, it really brings your faith up, isn't it? Actually, just to experience how the principles that unify us all, in spite of different traditions, in spite of different backgrounds, different practices, we have very, very common principles. And why is that? Because God is one. Is an inclusivist. Is a perfect inclusivist personality. There's just the term God himself means there's no one greater or equal to. So there is no question of having a Hindu God or a Christian God, a Jew God, like that. We worship in the same personality. Different times, different circumstances, different traditions, just make externals different. But the essence remains the same. And when we have this type of gatherings, then it brings our faith up. It's wonderful. Just like hearing from Chaplain Tahera and also Reverend Jeff, that we live in a world that is actually torn apart. That we just so much focus on differences, so much focus on externals that it brings wars among brothers and sisters, communities, countries, like that. So we have to come to this position of what unifies us. And what unifies us is our eternal relationship with God. And we have to come together with that. And this principle of fasting, I like to highlight it, that in our tradition, it is explained that in the Bhagavad Gita, which is like the Bible or the Quran for our tradition in the Indian continent, the Bhagavad Gita, there is a verse that says that in the beginning of creation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead sent forth a whole system, a whole structure in the universe. It is wonderful because this scripture talks about universal reality, a universal government. You can appreciate that. We have all our government officials and our esteemed Congress lady. There's a government in the universe, and the laws are given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is a Sanskrit verse that says, Dharmas tu Bhagavan Pranitam. Dharma means the laws of religion, the laws of conduct for all of us, the inhabitants or the citizens of the universe. And in the beginning of creation, he placed these laws for all humans to follow. And along with that, he gave the principles of sacrifice. These principles of sacrifice. So I was marveling when I hearing Dr. Ali saying there were 4 pillars, you said, no? 4 pillars.
5.
5 pillars.
Fast
But you,
is number 4.
okay. So there's pillars. When we build, in our tradition, there's 4 pillars of religion that I describe. Of course, you can build a building, and you can put many pillars, but you put a structure sort of on different pillars. So in our tradition, 4 pillars are given. The 4 pillars of religion is, the first one is truthfulness. You mentioned that, truthfulness, right? Truthfulness. The second one is compassion, also mentioned. We have to have feeling from the suffering of others, and not just humans, but actually all living entities. You know, we are citizens of a planet that is being destroyed, and so much suffering is caused on the plea of advancement in civilization. And the third one is purity or cleanliness. Purity inside, purity outside. And the fourth one is austerity. Austerity allows to actually take some discomfort, some sacrifice our own comfort zone for something higher. And among this principle of austerities, one that is universally followed is fasting. Fasting, as I was explained by all our esteemed guests, is a principle that allows to connect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How is that? And why? I try to finish with this. I wish I had a little more time to tell a story, but you have to, to put in context, what does it mean in our tradition, this fasting. In the Vedic scriptures, the revealed scriptures, it is explained what is the essence of the living entity, who we are. And it is explained that we are an eternal spirit soul. We're not the body. This body is simply a machine that we use to be able to function in a temporary world. We are an eternal being. Just like you have an eternal being who is functioning in a temporary world. So we have to have some sort of interface, some sort of a suit that allows to function in this temporary world. Just like if you go out of space, you put a space suit to be able to function there. Similarly, when an eternal being comes into this world, we take this material body. So fasting means trying to disconnect from the material body and try to connect to your spiritual body. I end with this because I have my stop sign. So, thank you so much, and again, my gratitude for
Thank you, Mr. Das, for your pointed words. Sat Sri Akal, I hear we have Mr. Karamjit Singh actually here from our Sikh community. If you could stand, please, to acknowledge you. Mr. Singh represents the Sikh community, and we'll now watch a 6-minute video clip made by Dr. Prabjot Singh, who's not here today. Dr. Singh will talk about how he was twice targeted after the September 9/11 attacks, and also about how he was attacked at Columbia University. Basically, the gist of the video is how hate crimes affect the innocent. So with further ado, someone could turn on the audiovisual.
Across the Sikh community. Last month, a Sikh cab driver was assaulted and had his turban ripped off in New York City. In March, a Sikh was shot in his driveway outside Seattle by a gunman who told him to go back. Apart from sharing our common humanity and a Sikh identity with these people, we shared something else. On September 21st, 2013, I had just dropped off my wife, Manmeet Kaur, and my son, Hukam Singh, who was just 1 year old at the time, before walking to a well-lit intersection near Columbia University. As I passed a group of 20 to 30 young men on bicycles, I heard terrorist and Osama from behind me as I felt my beard forcefully pulled. Time to see that the entire group is mobilizing towards me. The group surrounded me and began punching my face and body. As a physician, I immediately knew that my jaw was fractured because I could feel my teeth moving back and forth. Thankfully, bystanders intervened and prevented an even worse outcome. The next morning, I had surgery to place a stabilizing plate in my mouth, which remained in place for many weeks, even as I returned to work. A few days after being attacked, I wrote an op-ed that shared how deeply grateful I was, and still am, that my wife and son were not with me. Today, they are here with me, and Hukam is now 4 years old. I cherish the letters from Jewish leaders who shared their experience with anti-Semitism. And I still remember the letters from Muslims who shared fears about their children's safety. I experienced the professionalism of NYPD's hate crime unit. I was also interested in whether my experience would become part of the FBI hate crime statistics. We cannot address what we do not know. None of the headlines during that time mentioned that a recent Somali immigrant, a Muslim who wore a hijab, was also attacked by the same group that same evening. The young man threw a bottle of urine at her face, cutting her nose. I know that because she was in the stretcher next to me in the emergency room. When I asked reporters why they didn't mention it, they said it would complicate the story, which was about a professor and a doctor who was mistakenly attacked in his own neighborhood. We cannot accept this premise. There's no such thing as a mistaken hate crime. No one should ever be targeted. The only mistake is thinking otherwise. The other 2 times I was physically attacked after 9/11 did not make the news. In fact, I did not feel comfortable reporting them to anybody but my family and friends. In the aftermath, while finishing my PhD, I struggled with depression, but also found solace in practicing my sick faith. Then on August 5th, 2012, a neo-Nazi gunman walked into a gurdwara in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, and murdered 6 worshippers. Harpreet Singh Saini, who lost his mom at the Gurdwara that day, delivered powerful testimony before a Senate Judiciary Committee shortly thereafter, and I urge all of you to watch it again. These attacks have made me more aware of the broader context of hate in America. It's a breathtaking and urged into view into the past months as religious and minority communities have been subjected to threats, arson, assault, and murder. Why are these acts of hate growing? I was horrified to hear our president just this past weekend telling thousands of people at a rally that immigrants are snakes waiting to bite America. Words matter, and when political leaders divide and dehumanize us, it lays the groundwork for hate to infect our society. Senators, I urge you to review the written testimony of the Sikh Coalition and other groups that work on these issues. I wish to close with 2 recommendations. One is that hate crime reporting should be mandatory, not voluntary. We cannot address what we do not know. As a physician, I can attest that mandatory data reporting is crucial when the scope and of a challenge is unknown and solutions are urgently needed. Secondly, words matter. Politicians must hold each other accountable for putting their constituents in danger. It seems fashionable these days for politicians to scapegoat immigrants and Muslims, but this endangers all of us. My personal experience with hate violence is a case in point. Please hold each other accountable and make it stop. Senators, I have 2 young sons, and you can see my eldest. Look him here today, and with his grandfather, my dad. About both of them. My father, who brought us from Michigan from Kenya, currently lives in Indiana and works for Dow AgroScience. You may be surprised to hear that there's a large population of Sikhs in Indiana. They have recently asked for help to address vandalism against their businesses and violent encounters when they are asked to leave the country. I fear they won't be heard until something tragic happens. My son, Hukam Singh, is about to start kindergarten in the fall. He loves soccer, trains, and Dora the Explorer. Like most Sikh boys, he will wear a patka, a small piece of cloth on his head to cover his long hair. No one on our block treats him differently, and they watch out for him like he was theirs. But according to the Sikh Coalition, a majority of kids like him will be bullied and harassed in school. And as someone who was in his shoes 30 years ago, I know firsthand that I didn't want to talk about physical or verbal assaults with my parents. These are formative years, and how children are treated tells us so much about who we are as a nation and who we aspire to be. One day, I want to talk to him about this hearing and tell him that on this day, a group of senators looked me in the eye and said that hate is a problem in America, and that they thought about you as they committed to addressing it openly and honestly. Senators, I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity to share my story with you. Thank you.
Thank you to the Sikh community for sharing this video. Clearly, there is an alternative narrative to the one that we are trying to talk about here. Clearly, there is a narrative of hate that needs to be countered. Is that tonight, using our voices, we continue to promote the story of peace, love, tolerance, and spirituality. To that effect, I'd like to now invite Mr. Mohsen Ishaq, who's the youth coordinator at MCC. and Mr. DJ Kosiba, who's the social studies teacher at Niles West, to the podium. What these two individuals will be doing will be coordinating group discussions and group activities so that you get to use your voices at your table and engage with your neighbors.
It held out until the school year was over, and I'm just happy about that. I usually don't sound or look this bad. My students often ask me what my religion is, and my response is always that social justice is my religion, and that my most sacred text is the Bill of Rights. And I truly believe that the rights of all of us are tied up in the rights of all of us. And so when people ask me, why are you the sponsor for the Muslim Student Association? You're not Muslim. It's true, but I still care about the rights of all my brothers and sisters, and so should we. The more we come together, in spaces like this to learn about each other, the stronger our commitment to each other becomes, and the better equipped we become to work together to make the world a more just place for everyone. So I thank you all for being here today, because it's important. If everyone could find the yellow piece of paper on their table, I'm going to run through the directions with you quickly, and then Mohsen, do you want to add anything quick before we tell people who you are? It's very important. Sure. Okay, so we have some time restraints, so we're going to move quickly. It says 10 minutes for part one. We're going to try and do part one in 5 minutes. So I'm going to run through the directions with you very quickly. I'd like to thank Mohsen, because he's being humble, he doesn't want to talk right now, for helping create this. Part one is to build empathy and positive relationships, so we're talking about on individual levels. So often we come to events like this, we learn things from the speakers, and then we never really talk to the people right next to us. These two things are what I start my classes with every year, because it's important to build community at the individual level. So part one, you're going to take about a minute to come up with a response to these two questions. Number one, what is your name? And we're going to focus just on first names for time's sake. How do you pronounce it correctly, and what does it mean? So often I see lots of my students kind of sacrifice their name being pronounced correctly, and it's such a huge part of their identity and makes such a big difference, which is why it's the first question I always ask, and I say, if I pronounce it wrong, let me know. It's important enough for me to learn. Secondly, what is one important thing about you that others wouldn't know just by looking at you? And nothing is not an option, because I've gotten that a lot the first time I tried this. And so nothing is not an option here. Part two is very important. We are trying to take meaningful action here, not just tonight, but in the future together. And so you have Post-its on your table. On those Post-its, I'd like each one of you to complete the statement, in order to build stronger communities. Okay? Your response should focus on one important change or action that you believe needs to take place for us to build a stronger community. Please make them as specific or concrete as possible. It's important that your response focuses on something that's within your or our control, rather than something like, oh, the government needs to get their act together, right? I don't even necessarily think that's fair, because we have people like Michikowski, who is a warrior for social justice all the time, right? So it can't just be projected onto something else. The main point is to develop specific goals that we can work towards together and give our community members a voice, right? So everyone's voice is going to be posted on at least one of 6 giant Post-its, which you'll see around the room. I'm going to use my football coach voice, and when you have 5 minutes left, I'm going to scream 5 minutes left, and that is when you need to make sure that you're getting your Post-its done. When you're done with your Post-it, as you can see, I already put my Post-it up on one of those. Just walk on up there and stick it on a Post-it. Good? All right. Ready to go.
Corey. Corey means nothing other than my mother heard that name and liked it. So I'm a Catholic priest and co-founder of an Abrahamic coalition of youth and adult years. So Abrahamic
environment. right here to sing is but it's that you can do something too. But if I do it like this, I try to avoid stereotyping of it. So it goes like around this. And then my participation with my own congregation, I invite men and ask for somebody and what I
Everyone, we have about 2 minutes left. The beauty of the post-it note thing is that even if we run out of time and have to move on, you can still write at your stuff on a poster at some point. So we got about 2 minutes before we have to move on. If you need more time, keep your post-it and just stick it to a poster later on in the evening.
Interfaith and Outreach Committee to the front. Now Sheena is going to give us a Welcome in Cities update.
Oh, I love that applause. I haven't even done anything. I teach high school and I get boos all the time, so thank you. You know, I'm really Morton Grove trustees for approving this resolution that welcomes everyone to live in Morton Grove without fear of being profiled, fear of being stopped by police officers, fear that if they contact a police officer, that someone in their family might get deported or whatever. But just living without fear. So thank you so much. Would you please stand to each and applause? Please stand. Thank you. And the mayor, because we did it with his support. Come on, Mayor Maria. Thank you. You know, I want to let you know that this was not easy for the trustees because they did have people that, that weren't on board with it, and, it takes courage to do what's right. And so I wanted to make sure that we understand that we have joined in the ranks of wonderful communities like Oak Park, Skokie, of course, and Evanston. So we are leading the pack here in welcoming all types of people that are good people, good neighbors, and they don't have to worry about what faith, how they look. So this is so thank you again. There is a a Lincolnwood trustee here. Is Trustee Jean here? I want to go ahead and let you guys point her out to you because Please let her know how important this is, because Lincolnwood is also thinking about getting a welcoming cities ordinance, and I think that it's great. And you can see the support here, how beautiful this looks. I want to thank the people who helped us as Morton Grove residents. I don't think that we could have done it without some organizational help. Ted Smuckler from Open Communities, thank you so much. Would you please rise? We have to have you. Thank you. His help in organizing, we were simply a group of citizens. I was being very, very selfish because I look different. I have a teenage son. I actually don't have a teenage son anymore. I have one that's 12 and one that's 24, so they're not teenagers, but just concerned for them because things have happened, while they've been growing, well, at least the older one. So I was just being selfish, and I needed it for my family. I needed it for our community. But Ted here, and then, we had Laura Frisch from Morton Grove Women Who Drink Tea. That's a long title. But she and I spoke, and she's doing it because she's just a good person, and she understands how great it is to live in a great, diverse community. But we needed Ted's help because we're these women that aren't political, we're not particularly organized, and he just taught us how to become organized, what to do, where we should go, the kind of letters we should write. So thank you. And then John Lon, is John here? I don't know if, John Lon is a Morton Grove resident, and he has an organization called Americans in Solidarity, which is a progressive group of people who want to make this country better. So again, thank you, trustees. Thank you, Mayor DiMaria. Thank you, Ted Smuckler, for making us all make Morton Grove the best place to live in the world.
So in approximately 6 minutes, the call to prayer will be announced, and at that point, we'll be breaking our fasts. What I would like for you to do, those of you who are interested in observing our ritual prayer, please go ahead and take a date from the table and a water bottle and make your way upstairs. We will have our youth volunteers usher you upstairs.
Due to double parking by certain vehicles. If you are double parked, please move your vehicles so other vehicles can pass through and park as well.
So don't double park.
And if you block
Prior to going upstairs, I just wanted to have 2 of our youth council students guide you through the ritual wudu or cleansing prior to prayer, explain to you what the iftar is, and then explain to you what the congregational prayers are. They'll do so in the next 4 minutes. So Sarah and Bushra, if you could make your way to the podium.
So welcome, hi everyone. It is an honor that I introduce Bushra Amiwala. Bushra graduated and recognized immensely for her service, work, leadership, and many extracurricular activities, and overall serving as a mentor and guide for all the students. Bushra is now a freshman at DePaul, where she is a community service scholar, vice president of DECA, senator for the College of Business, and the Woman of Spirit in Action Award recipient. Recently, Bushra Amiwala announced her candidacy for Cook County Commissioner for the 13th District and hopes to marry her passion for service with interest in the government.
And it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Sarah Baiji. Sarah Baiji is a current senior at Glenbrook South High School. She's an advocate for Muslims in the North Shore community, hence why she was the recipient of the North Shore Interfaith Leadership Award last year. And not only that, but she resides as the president for her school's Muslim Student Association, and at GBS she was the treasurer for student government and was prom queen. But wait, there's more. She also is the treasurer of the Muslim Education Center's very own girls' youth group, Sisters Stepping Up, and she will be attending Lake Forest College next fall to pursue a degree in public health and to follow her fashion dreams by minoring in that as well. Is iftar the first meal a Muslim consumes when beginning their fast?
False.
That is correct. So right now we're just going through a little simulation to test one another on our knowledge of Ramadan and some of some of the fundamentals that we hope that you all learn as well. So she is correct. Sahur is the Islamic term referring to the meal consumed early in the morning by Muslims before eating. It's done in the dawn and the daylight hours in the Islamic month of Ramadan. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said himself that Allah sends blessing to those who eat sahur. So, eat sahur. Also, this prevents a terrible temper, which regularly comes as a result of hunger. It shows to Allah that you're willing to wake up this early for His sake, and it prepares you for the following day by allowing you time to pray the first daily prayer, which is Fajr.
Fantastic. Bushra, is it true Muslims break their fast with just anything?
I'm gonna go with false. I feel like it's more organized than that.
Well, you see, Muslims genuinely break their fast with a date. First of all, because it's the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, one of his daily rituals. And with that, dates are actually very, very, very scientifically proven to be helpful to your body. They also contain potassium, magnesium, iron, fiber, fat, and carbohydrates. Dates are easily digested, making them a quick source of energy and nutrients. And eating dates after a long day of fasting helps your body's blood glucose levels return to normal. So when not fasting, the consumption of dates before a meal will satisfy the sensation of hunger, which all in all helps avoid overeating, which we all tend to do.
Oh yeah. So Sarah, is it true that the Ravi is read in conjunction to the Maghrib Salah?
Absolutely not.
She got me there. Yeah, good job, nice, okay. So the Ravi is a prayer read during Ramadan. It's a special evening prayer read along with the Isha Salah, and where long portions of the Quran are recited. These special prayers are known as the Ravi.
Awesome. Bushra, is it true that we call the special prayer during Ramadan Iftar?
No, just went over that. Nope, false.
Well, the definition of iftar. Iftar is the meal served at the end of the day during Ramadan to break the day's fast. Literally, it means break fast. Iftar is served at sunset during each day of Ramadan as Muslims break the daily fast. The other meal during Ramadan, which is what we talked about, suhoor.
And we hope you learned a little bit more about Ramadan, and that's it for today, for us at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah and Bushra, for your infotainment. You had us all smiling. So, just to reiterate what will happen now, there will be a call to prayer. For those of you who are interested in observing, please take a date and a water bottle upstairs. The men's prayer hall is located on the first floor, and our ushers will be able to direct you. For the women, you can either take the stairs or take the elevator to the second floor. After the congregational prayer upstairs, we will ask you to come back downstairs for the iftar and for the evening meal. Should you feel like you're getting lost, there's always somebody to answer your questions and guide you back down here. Okay?
Water bottle.
Dal, but that makes
Try to put in one pipe, isn't it? I know where we can go next year. That's
I would just like to advise you that you are certainly welcome to stay and mingle afterwards. However, around 9:30 p.m., congregants will be trickling in for the Tarawih or late night prayers. So as not to get boxed in at 9:30 p.m., we'd love to have you all night. You might want to move your vehicle prior to that. Okay? Without further ado, I welcome Father Corey Brost.
Assalamu alaikum. It's such an honor to be here. I feel like when I look out, this is what the world looks like, but unfortunately this isn't enough how the world sounds. People of different faiths, traditions, ethnic backgrounds talking, laughing. But it will be more like that tonight, because of tonight and because of the wonderful people at MCC. So a round of applause please for this wonderful, wonderful community of faith. We need to keep moving from a nation of tolerance of others to a nation of reverence for the other. And tonight we're closer because of MCC. Thank you. If we could take a moment of quiet and ask that eternal force we know as God, who continues to shower love upon this creation, to make us aware of the divine presence. O Holy One, O Eternal One, we gather in your presence, the presence we witness so forcefully in the eyes of those at our table. The presence we hear so beautifully in their voices. We thank you for this opportunity to glimpse your beauty in a fuller sense by getting a deeper glimpse of the beauty of several of your followers from different traditions. We have been enriched. And from the beginning of time, O Holy One, you have called forth women and men to glimpse your beauty and then to be witnesses of that beauty in all cultures and in many different traditions. And so again, O Holy One, O God of all nations and faiths, you have called us this evening. You have fed us food for the body and food for the soul. And now we recognize that you send us to be witnesses to the world, to be agents of peace, to be engineers who construct bridges of understanding and reverence between traditions. So please walk with us as you have walked with all the prophets and holy ones from the beginning of time. Ever by our side, strengthening us and guiding us along your way, and continually whispering into our ears when we become weary or afraid. Be not afraid. I am with you, have always been with you, and will always be with you. Amen.